We're not live. You can start all over now.
You can unmute yourself.
You can't unmute yourself, in the words of Gregory.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Nike. Would you like to tell us about
Hi,
yourself?
Nike.
So my name is Ranike Shakir. I am, well, officially, I go by Nike Rebel. I am originally from the island of Bermuda, which is very mystical and has a lot to do with my upbringing there has a lot to do with my passions currently. I grew up in one of the largest families on the island, but we have so many, just a huge variety of people in our family. So I have a lot of cousins that were involved in a lot of things, and which led to my my perception of law enforcement, my perception of the government. I grew up with seeing the SWAT team busting in my aunt's houses, doing unnecessary raids, harassing my elderly aunts. I grew up seeing my cousins being pulled off of motorcycles by law enforcement, people that were very dear to me being attacked and abused by the people who I was taught in school that were supposed to keep me safe. So before I even moved to America, I already had a distorted view of what law enforcement is versus what it should be. So that was just my early upbringing. I moved to America when I was 7 years old. I'm a dreamer. So we came with $1 in a dream. We came to Lithonia, Georgia at first. It was very interesting. I moved right into like East DeKalb County. I did most of my schooling in DeKalb County because I skipped the second grade because our school system is a little different. So I went straight into third grade, eventually graduating from Clarkston High School and going on to Valdosta State University, where I obtained a degree in psychology. I have a bachelor's of arts in psychology with a minor in African American studies and kinesiology. Although Valdosta State is a very white school, we had a great African American Studies department, probably not comparable to HBCU, but we had most of our professors came from HBCU. So I think that we were privileged in that way, that we were able to kind of get that love when we weren't really at home, if that makes sense. So my professors are very integral in my interest in justice reform and just helping me to realize my position as an African American woman, and also to realize the reality of what was going on against our people. When I was in college, that's when that was around the time I graduated in 2013. So that was around the time when Kendrick Lamar Johnson was murdered in Valdosta. Also, that was around the same time that I can't think of his name right now, but you know, the kid with the hoodie and the Skittles. What's his name? Yes, Trayvon Martin. I'm sorry. Yes, so Trayvon Martin, Trayvon Martin was murdered also while I was in college, and those two cases were the first two cases that I rallied for and became very interested in, and decided to not only view the change like everyone else, but be a part of the change and try to help.
Hold on. Nika, breathe. I know you're nervous. This is her first show with us, and you just ramble through cases, your history, and everything in like 4 minutes. Take a deep breath. This is a conversation, not a race. And we are going to talk about the lack of justice, especially when it comes to our youth. And some of the cases that you just highlighted was Kendrick Johnson and Trayvon Martin. And so we're going to have a full conversation about this as Gregory does what Gregory does. And I'm going to mute myself. So I'll turn it back over to you, Nika.
Okay. So with Kendrick, how I got involved in the when I say involved, I was very loosely involved. This was one of my first real interests in the criminal justice system and the unjust and how we were being treated unjust. I think social media had a lot to do with me getting involved, because I felt like I had the option. I felt like that I can actually do something by spreading the word, spreading awareness, showing up. It allowed me to not only inform other people, but to stay informed with the movements that were going on in and around the area, and that were relevant to the causes that I was interested in supporting. So should I start with the Kendrick Lamar case?
Yes.
Okay. So Kendrick Johnson was 16 years old. He was I want to say he was a sophomore at Lowndes County High School. That was like 5 minutes from where I lived when I went to school in Valdosta. When it originally happened, just going off memory, how we found out maybe 3 days after, because that's when the autopsy photos were released. And that's when...
Wait, slow down. You found out 3 days after it originally happened, or 3 days after mainstream media got...
No, so mainstream... Okay, so let me rewind. So Kendrick Johnson went missing on January 10th. His family called up to the school, said he didn't come home. He was an active member on the football team, the basketball team at his school. He was well known. Just to give a little history on Valdosta, it's a very split city, very divided, just like most of the country, but because it's smaller, it's more obvious, I would say. It's definitely more obvious than being in a bigger city like Atlanta. So when I moved there, it was kind of instant. You realize that you're not as welcome as bigger cities. People don't necessarily curb their racism. So most of the schools are kind of split, black and white. Valdosta County is known as the black school, and Valdosta City School is known as the black school, and Lowndes County is known as the white school. But Kendrick went to Lowndes County, and he went missing on January the 10th. His family called up to the school, said he didn't come home. They called the police department, reported him missing. And it wasn't until January 11th that his body was found in the old gym of his high school, because the school had just gotten renovated. And the old gym of his high school, his body was found wrapped inside of a gym mat. And the coroner and the DA, the Lowndes County Sheriff Department, never ruled it a murder. They never really investigated it until his family went farther to kind of push them into it. Originally, students found his body. They were in the gym, they were looking for something, and they looked over and they saw what they thought was a sock. And they called a teacher. The teacher came, rolled the mat open, and realized that it was Kendrick's body inside of the mat. His face was swollen beyond recognition. He was obviously beaten. His shoes were off, and they immediately called the sheriff's department, who then came and called the current coroner. Now, the coroner, there's so many different reports, but the coroner openly stated that he didn't agree with how the case was being handled from the get-go, and when he was called on to at the crime scene had been altered tremendously. He said that the body bag was open multiple times for multiple people to see his body before he was even brought to the coroner's office, which is not protocol. He said that the body had been moved before he got there. There were just so many things that weren't done usually in a murder case or a case where you would find a body. So that went up in the air. But like I said, 3 days after this happened, which would have been January 13th, his autopsy picture was released, and it went viral because he resembled Emmett Till. And of course, that hit a lot of people hard, because we remember, how it had the nation in outrage when people were able to have a visual to go with the story. And I think that also seeing the picture and hearing the stories, the rumors, because I was in the city, I was able to see the rumors. I was able to hear the rumors that were going around about him having a white girlfriend, about him having him being in arguments with people about that and things like that. So I was able to hear those things that affected my involvement a lot, because although the story was incomplete, they didn't have much evidence to go off of it. I just felt that it was really obvious that it was more to the story and that wasn't much being done. So I really wanted to advocate for him. So did you want to bring up the... Oh, sorry. The Kendrick...
I'm on me. Yeah, go ahead and bring up Kendrick's, and then I'm preparing for the story after that.
Okay.
All right, do you see how to do it?
Let me see how. Yep, just a second.
So Nikkei actually has prepared some footage and little more detailed information for you to view. And that is what she's preparing right now. We also, after this, we are going to be discussing this young man, the reasons why we brought up this case with Kendrick Lamar Johnson. It may seem like it's old. His family still hasn't received proper justice, for one. And this next case or story that we're going to share with you about is just as equally heart-wrenching. In this case or scenario, the young man didn't die, but it's brutal and heart-wrenching enough where he's definitely going to need some trauma counseling later on in the future. So right now, are you ready to go, DK?
Yes, I am pressing the share button.
All right.
Second. All right. Is it sharing?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Just a second. Is it sharing now?
No, it isn't. Okay, so
It says it is.
you should be able to see it. Okay, it is. Hold on, I got it. Oh no, wait a minute. Open the tab that you're trying to share. And here we go, y'all. Thank you for your patience with us.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Nikkei, you want to share what you're sharing?
All right. So I wanted to share just some details, I would say, just the facts behind the Kendrick Lamar story, because although I just told kind of what happened, like I said, we don't have much information about what happened the day that he passed or what actually happened to him. All we have is the evidence that's presented and then what happened following. So you see right, can you see that? Okay. So, like I said, there was a preliminary investigation and autopsy concluded that the death was accidental originally. Their claim was that Kendrick was he was on the top of the bleachers and he was reaching down into the gym mat for a shoe. Going to show you the shoe in a second. They say he was reaching down into it for a shoe. However, his shoes were found on top of his body, and there was a shoe at the bottom of the mat. And I don't know, it depends on if you're familiar with gym mats. I did a lot of dance and gymnastics and a lot of tumbling, so I'm very familiar. We used to have to roll up the gym mats after. They're very heavy and very difficult to get into. Like if you were to fall into one, you would probably just stick out. You wouldn't actually go down into it. So that was just one of the conclusions that just didn't make sense to anybody, really. So the Johnson's family, they hired a private investigator. They got a pathologist to conduct a second autopsy, which concluded that blunt force trauma was actually the cause of death, opposed to asphyxiation, which was listed initially. Sorry. So after asphyxiation was ruled out, the U.S. Attorney for Middle Georgia determined that they were going to reopen the case. Oh, sorry, my thing's going crazy. That they were going to reopen the case and conduct a formal murder investigation into KJ's death. Later, they ruled again that it was an accident. KJ's family actually sued the Lowndes County Sheriff's Department, saying that it was a conspiracy to cover up the homicide. The judge actually threw it out, and they determined that the judge ordered the Johnsons, to pay their attorney more than almost $300,000 in legal fees to them and their attorney had to pay almost $300,000 to the defendants, who was the coroner and a couple of the police officers who worked at the sheriff's department, to pay them $300,000 because they claimed that they had made up things to support their claims. Now, these are just some of the pictures of Kendrick's body. Now, if you remember what he looked like originally, he was a pretty good looking black man. And this is how he was found. This is the picture of how his body was found rolled up in the mat. You can see that the shoes that he had on were kind of, that would be on top because the mat was standing up. So this would be on top. And then the shoe that they said he was reaching for, which would be this one, was found below his body with blood next to it on the floor. There was no blood on the shoe at all, but there was blood found next to the body on the floor. They determined that there was no foul play. However, this is his face. So obviously, I mean, I'm no investigator, but I feel that it's pretty obvious that someone did something to his face. He was hit in the face somehow. They originally concluded that he looked like that because he had been upside down, and that he was asphyxiated, so that's why he looked like that. But like I said, in the later autopsy, they determined that the actual cause of death was blood force trauma to the head and neck, which caused a heart attack. So he actually died of a heart attack, and that's something that wasn't released originally because this coroner actually determined that although he said that he didn't approve of how the investigation was held, he actually determined that he said that he removed his organs because they were too badly damaged, which delayed the evidence and the conclusion of him dying of a heart attack, because his organs were completely removed, and he stuffed his body with newspaper. So, and they didn't figure that out until his body was exhumed, and they reinvestigated and was able to determine the original cause of death. So this is just the Justice for Kendrick website. If anybody would like to get involved, his parents have still not received anything. They're getting publication. They've been in contact and represented by Benjamin Crump, who is a very prominent attorney and has a lot of experience with these type of issues. So he has been definitely making headway on this case. Recently, it was released that there was about 2,000 hours of video footage of that day in and around that gym. So it's going to show them who went in the gym, how long they were in the gym, and what kind of happened. You can't, in the videos that I saw, you can't directly see the mat that he was in, but you can see everything leading up to it. So obviously those haven't all been released, but they're supposed to be available for them to address in court as evidence whenever that time comes.
Nika, are you finished with your
So
share?
that was all I had on Kendrick.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. So I actually had the privilege of having lunch with a gentleman here in Atlanta. He was on his voice was on a show. He wasn't on the show, but his name is Mr. Jimmy Hill, whose son, Jimmy Atchison, was murdered by the police. And so while we were having lunch, no, we were actually on the phone. We were supposed to have had lunch. While we were on the phone, he shared with me about this young man named Jerry Chambers, and I'm going to show you what he tagged me in, and
Mommy, can you do it?
what he tagged me in, so that you can see what I can see. Nika,
Yeah,
can
so
you
I
see
did
it?
a lot of yes. Well, not
You can-
yet,
Mom, can you do it?
Okay.
but I did do a lot of research on this case, and it's very interesting.
Okay, hold on one quick second. We're gonna play this. You can see it on my screen. You can see the video.
Not yet, but mine's a little slow.
Mom, can you
Wait, hold on.
Mom, can you do it?
Hold on, Nika. Mhm. Okay, so Finn, if you don't mind sharing more about Kendrick while I get my screen share together, please.
Oh, sure. So, just a second.
Okay, I'm good.
So there were a lot. Okay.
Okay. Ooh, what is this? Oh. Hold on.
That's the
Can you
TikTok.
hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it. I just can't see it.
Whoa. Uh-oh, this isn't the well that so that is on Facebook, and the music isn't censored, which usually is censored on Facebook. So my apologies. Nika, do you mind loading up the video of the press conference? And while you do that, I'll
Mom, that's not like on YouTube.
I'll get my video together. And thank you so much.
Or I could start on the I have would you like me to pull up the Justice for Jerry presentation?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Quint. Thank you for being patient with us as we work out our technical difficulties. This is Nika and I's first time together, and I'm engineering, and that's usually not what I do. We usually have the great Robert Bryant. So,
All right. Can you see the presentation?
yeah, yes.
Okay. So Jerry Chambers, the Chambers story is very relevant to the Kendrick Johnson story in the sense that it was very obviously a hate crime. I believe in both cases, but this one it's obviously a hate crime, and for the criminal justice system in Powhatan, Virginia, not to take this serious is very heart-wrenching, especially because the evidence is pretty overwhelming. Just a second. Okay.
Okay, before she gets into, if you can go back, Nika. So I'll just say this to give y'all a quick rundown. This is the picture of a 16-year-old boy, young man, black man, future black leader, or leader today. And the what so is when he was 14 years old, he went out drinking with some of his Caucasian comrades, and he thought that they were better friends to him than what they were. He woke up with a dildo on his back, and he had different racial slurs covered all over his face, and he was wrapped in a Confederate flag. So on that note, I'm going to allow Nike to finish sharing with you more of the story of what happened to him.
That picture?
Yep. Yeah, we saw the picture.
Okay. I was just wondering because it's kind of obscene. Okay, so
Yes.
so like Shantae was saying, Jerry Chambers attended a party with some of his friends. He was the only African American male there. He was the only African American there, period. The attendees consisted of about 15, 16 to 19-year-old white males and females. Jerry recalls having a few drinks and having some fun, but then he kind of blacked out. He doesn't remember anything else. So when he woke up the next morning, he saw he was kind of flooded with tags and messages from his friends, seeing the pictures on social media of him, like Shantae said, with unconscious with racial slurs written on his face and his head, and there was a dildo on his shoulder. There were multiple pictures, and they were posted all over Instagram and Snapchat. Some of the pictures, the offenders were actually tagged in them. Jerry himself was tagged in them, and the other people at the party, which kind of made it really crazy that no one was ever held responsible. So here's the pictures that he saw when he woke up the next morning, which obviously will just cause trauma to anybody. He has no idea what was on his face, the yellow stuff that was on his face. Obviously they took time to write all of those things on him. And then while he was using the bathroom, they put a Confederate flag on him and took more pictures. The next day, his parents went to the police department, two police departments, both the county and the city, and they were kind of brushed away. They didn't feel that that their situation was taken seriously, and they were never really received any follow-up to the investigation. They were instructed by the sheriff's department that hate crimes is a state thing so that the state would have to investigate it, but they never received any type of follow-up, any type of victim services or anything like that until December of 2021, when one of the people that were actually working to service Jerry actually contacted them in regards to updates on the case. And that's when someone finally reached out to them and started to offer victim services. The Powhatan Police Sheriff's Department seemingly didn't put any type of urgency towards the case. They didn't really put any effort towards the case. All of the suspects, like I said, were clearly identified. They knew exactly who was there. However, no one was ever arrested. No one was ever questioned. Nothing happened in regards to the case because the Powhatan Police Sheriff's Department determined that they said that the Chambers family didn't want to press charges at first, but then they came back a year later saying that they did want to press charges and they wanted to press charges for a battery and assault case. However, the Virginia statutes of limitation actually for assault cases is a year, exactly 12 months, and it had already been 15 months since the crime occurred. So this is just another picture that was, as you can see, the person is visible in the picture. And like I said, they posted them from their personal account. So there was no kind of there wasn't really an investigation needed. However, the FBI did complete a forensic investigation 16 months after it happened. And they determined that there was no crime committed and that writing is not a crime. So they did not press any charges or go forward with the investigation, which leaves Jerry kind of just feeling very vulnerable, very unsafe in his community. He recently had he actually spoke at a Black Lives Matter event supporting him, where he stated that he had suffered with suicidal thoughts and he actually attempted to commit suicide on February. And that's kind of what prompted his parents to go ahead and get his story out and try to get national recognition for it. Shantae, did you have anything to add?
I do. I am actually going to shift this. Move you. And this is this is actually what happened when several of the activists got involved. This is a 4-minute video. It's on Facebook. So all things relevant media or our Black media is not responsible or accountable for any of the language that may or may not be used. And we do not own the rights to any of the music utilized. And this is already distributed online on Facebook. So Facebook would be accountable for any kind of violations. Here it goes.
All right, so my point is, if y'all not policing, why can't we do it?
Can you hear it?
What's your question? My thing is,
Why did you let him be out of here doing 40 miles an hour almost hit me?
why didn't y'all do y'all job?
Can somebody ask that
We
question?
identified it.
I'm making sure everybody's safe and you letting him speed out of here.
We identified it from
Because what happened if it was a neighbor that was walking and somebody come out in the street? Why are you walking away?
Hey,
What's your name? Name your badge or something? What's your name? What's your badge number, sir?
He can't hear everybody at one time. He can't hear everybody at one time. He can't hear
What is your
everybody
badge
at a
number?
time. But if I pull off and leave skid marks in the street, you gonna give me reckless driving, right?
Scrape your stem right here, right
I
here.
ain't on this property.
Okay, yeah.
You didn't pull that man over. He almost hit somebody and he peeled out. Can we get that one question answered? I didn't feel safe when he did that. Can we get that one question answered? I got 4 reckless drivers on my record. One of them came from somebody hanging out my window. I know them reckless drivers. When that racist motherfucker put out here, I did not feel safe. The skid marks, he almost hit most for doing that right in front of you here for safety, but you ain't being safe. What the fuck? Make it make sense. Safety, but you can't comment on the
Fuck all that. What is your badge number? Yes, can we get your badge number, please? badge number? Hello, Danny. Like, am I talking to myself? Like, what the hell? Everybody's not screaming because I've been talking to him by myself, and he's still not saying anything.
Excuse me, officer. What's his name again?
Danny, hello.
Excuse me, Captain.
Is he work to say the captain?
And it's not about anything that's under investigation. Is there why did you let him pull out here recklessly like that? Stealing wheels. But you could have pulled him over right there.
You can't pull him over.
That's the first badge number.
So you can't pull somebody over later.
He's already gone. You can't charge.
Did y'all hear that shit?
Hold on, I just want to clarify. So you are going to deal with it, right? You're just not dealing with it today. That's what you're saying?
It can be dealt with.
But are you going to deal with it is what I'm asking.
Okay, so what's your name?
Somebody get all right, hold on.
What's your name, sir?
Everybody, when we leave, street tight, burn the rubber off that shit, and do
This badge number is just 3.
Yeah, badge number is 3.
So maybe his last name is Danny Smith. Maybe that's his name. I don't know.
What the fuck just happened? All right, hey, so we gonna call the car club. We gonna have a rally up and down these streets, burning up the tires.
Oh, we doing a takeover.
Ain't nobody.
We doing a takeover.
Who raised it first?
Hold on. We're going to get dealt with later. We're not getting dealt with after we do it.
Watch out, y'all about to do donut.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, spin that bitch. Spin it home.
Burning rubber. Okay, he was gonna deal with it. He get back. Everybody deal with it. I mean, he almost hit. I got the same answer. Right in front of him. Right in front of him, bro. Right in front of him. And then he peeled up. No.
We got that Tesla. Bring that red key.
So as you see, in this case, the family's not getting that much support from the police because the police seem to be involved. Like they don't care. They're actually there at the house of the accused, protecting them. And there's a couple of more videos where later on they allow them to drive out, and what they were making reference to was the fact that they had did a burnout in leaving out of the off of the property. So here we have Nikkei. Where you at?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready?
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can see you and hear you.
Hi, Nisa.
Hi, Nikkei. That's Gregory.
Can you see my screen?
Okay. All right. I'm going to add it in. You ready? So now Nikkei has ready to go for y'all. She is so wonderful. She's located at the press conference. I believe it happened yesterday.
Yeah, I believe it was yesterday, and there's actually another one going on for anybody who is in and around the Virginia area. He's doing another one tomorrow at the Powhatan Courthouse. So, and there's a lot. They have a lot planned. There's someone else that is supporting him that has a couple more events lined up for them, and I'll try to find that and share that after he speaks. So he's going to share a little bit. He doesn't share exactly what happened, but he does share just his feelings and kind of how his mental state since which.
Okay. Thank
Nor
you.
was it called for. I decided to speak out for the first time publicly because I never want others who have experienced a hate crime to feel alone.
I'm going to.
As many of you know, I was a victim of a hate crime. It was not a joke, nor was it called for. I decided to speak out for the first time publicly because I never want others who have experienced a hate crime to feel alone. I want other victims to speak out as well. Being a victim of a hate crime definitely scars you for life. It takes away your human rights, and for me, I felt like I lost my manhood. How would you feel if you woke up to use the bathroom and looked in the mirror and saw that writing on you? How would you feel if you were physically abused with a sex toy? How would you feel if you were surrounded by guns all night, also being the only black man in the room with racists? How much more would I have to express for law enforcement to do anything about it? This was important in 2020. This is really what happens in America today, and it's sickening. This is where I'm begging for everyone's support. Whether you know me or not, I'm begging to raise awareness of the hate in our community and worldwide. I need any type of help against the suspects and law enforcement that refuse to do their job. I also want to share the impact it had on me recently. Y'all found me saying something personal?
Oh, speak your piece, brother. Speak your piece, brother.
On February 28th, I had a very severe suicide attempt. I was in the ICU for days, not having the strength to even get up and walk. It was not worth it at all, and it never is. Never let the actions of someone else determine whether you want to live or not. Every single person listening to this right now has a future, and I hate to see anybody lost due to suicide. Please continue to send support and help me seek justice.
We stand with you.
So I was just, when I was watching it, I was just watching his body language and, how reluctant he was to share. And I can just tell it just happening a couple years ago. I can imagine how fresh it is. And although he's receiving the counseling and the support, he still almost committed suicide on February 28th, which is very recent. And I just felt that.
But even beyond that, like he's 16. He was 14 when it happened. So the last 2 years,
I think he was 16 when it happened. He's 18 now.
No, well, really, he's 18 now. Are you sure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I looked
because
on his
the original report they were saying was that he was 14. But okay, so even at 16, like that is enough to question your manhood. And I just want to make note that when there was the initial media, they didn't say that he was physically assaulted with the sex toy. They just made it seem like the toy was placed on his shoulder. They minimized it. The very first media report, they didn't say anything about the Confederate flag. And so why they're trying not to say that it's a hate crime makes sense. Like if it's like they're saying that writing alone isn't a hate crime, but you throw a Confederate flag into it and you throw an assault charge into it. And here we have this young man, and he's a good looking black man. He's a kid. And here it is. He's now questioning his manhood, his mental health, his future, like everything.
His desire to live, because he was humiliated in front of his peers, and not even only his peers. It was broadcasted on social media, and I feel like his reluctancy has a lot to do with the fact that it's like reliving it, to have to share those images. And I had the privilege of going on his Instagram, and there's pictures from 2020, and then there's the picture from now where he's finally saying, kind of sharing his story and saying, and I feel like that says a lot, because think of a teenager it's not on social media, that was very active on social media, it's just his entire image is being questioned now because they violated him. And I think, just like his parents said, if it was a Caucasian girl or even an Asian girl, or Asian man or anybody that's not black, it would have been a thing. It would have been an issue. And for them to minimize it as writing, as if they didn't write racial slurs.
Well, if they weren't tear gas and Black Lives Matters protesters, but they're letting these 15 to 20 kids go away with nothing happening to any of them. Although they say White Lives Matter all over his black face, and they have the swastika and the N-word plastered all over this young man. So if they feel that it's just writing, when we march and protest with our signs, how is it that is a threat? But it's not a hate crime for this young man to have been terrorized. That's an act of terrorism.
For them to minimize it to assault, and then like I said,
sexual trauma. There's all. I mean, look at him sitting on the toilet.
But because it's that happened in the workplace. I was thinking about.
He said he was physically assaulted with the sex toy.
He definitely.
A physical assault with a sex toy isn't someone taking a sex toy and hitting it on your neck. That's not a physical assault.
And you would know. So you would know as a grown man.
Like, why is he sitting on the toilet with a Confederate flag on him? Like, This is just sickening, and I pray that that's not it, because it's nothing in there. He hasn't said it out loud other than physically assaulted, but it just, if you're going to be that much of a low life to go and put SWAT stickers and White Lives Matter on somebody's face, you know, if it would have been a black person, like you said, doing the same thing, they'd be sitting in prison.
Honestly, I feel like even if this happened on a college campus opposed to in whomever's house, you know, they've said, I watched another video where they openly said that a couple of the kids were connected to and just like the KJ case, like I said, is very similar, because there was rumor that the kids that I guess one of the kids who have known to have a problem with KJ is actually linked to some of the sheriff's departments. Maybe there was his dad or some type of family or something, and they're saying the same thing in this case, that some of the kids are linked to police officers, and they feel that it's directly being covered up for that reason.
Yeah So hold on,
it's white privilege. Plainly,
it is white privilege. All right, so I'm at a loss for words. Like it just, you know, I have a 17-year-old that's almost his age, and to know it could be, I'm not going to say I doubt that it would be Bryce. It could be Bryce. It could be any one of our children. You know, anytime you start thinking that it won't happen to you, it can't happen to you, that's when it ends up at your front door. So never sit too high and never look too low. Isn't that how it goes? Never look too high, never sit too low. Same difference. Don't look up to anybody and don't look down on anybody. Don't feel like anyone's better than you. Don't feel like anyone's less than you. Just be all right with where you're at, because it can always happen right where you're at. So, you know, that family needs as much support. That young man needs so much support. And, you know, I mean, I was that teenager at 15 that almost committed suicide. And so I can hear that conversation. It's very dark and empty space to be in. And I just
said
hope
he was in ICU for days.
Yeah, I just hope that that young man gets the support that he needs, the love that he needs, just everything that he needs. I hope that he gets his dignity, his respect back, and anything else that may have been jeopardized or shattered because of one night.
And it's effect on him and his family. His dad spoke very openly about, you know, being the father of a son that he feels helpless. You know, he feels like he can't save his son now because this has been done. And despite his efforts to involve law enforcement, they're not doing anything. But I would like to openly commend both parents in both situations. I know personally, I saw KJ's mom with my own eyes go to jail at the Lowndes County Courthouse because they were blocking the doors. His mom, his grandmother, I think a couple of his aunties all got arrested and went to jail, you know, in the fight for the justice for their son. And I feel like a lot of us just won't sacrifice, you know, there's a lot of parents that won't sacrifice that for them, for their kids. And I would just like to openly commend them because they're fighting the fight and they're making it known that my child was hurt and someone's going to do something about it.
Yep. And you know what? Keep on, if you don't mind, I'm going to pull up a YouTube that I think is so relevant right now.
Yeah, I think.
Did you have anything else, Nika?
I didn't have any more cases to share. I do want to bring light to the Melissa Lucio case because she is although she received a stay of just to give everybody kind of like a little brief. Melissa Lucio, she is in Texas. She's a Hispanic woman who was charged with the murder of her 2-year-old daughter. Her daughter fell down the stairs and 2 days later she died. It was later found after she was charged with the murder and put on death row, like literally they were going to execute her last month because they believed that she killed her daughter. And when the Innocence Project got involved, they actually found that her daughter had a disease that actually prevented her blood. It made her blood clot. So she actually died not from the fall down the stairs, but from an injury that she was healing from. Originally, they said that the injury was the result of abuse, but then after later investigation and getting expert witnesses, a pediatrician actually came forward and said that the injury that the little girl had was very common with toddlers, and it's just simple from falling from standing up. Like, it wasn't a huge thing. She was not physically abused, and she Melissa maintains her innocence. And I would just encourage anybody to go and look at her petition and sign it, because she's definitely going to need it. Although she does get to speak her case again, she's still going to need that support. So Melissa Lucio out of Texas.
Yep. And the last thing that I would like to comment on is how I don't know where Julia stands with this, so I hope that he doesn't. The lack of justice when it comes to the reversal of Roe versus Wade. Unless they're going to come up with birth control for men outside of a condom, then I don't feel that they should tell us women what to do with our fallopian tubes. And that may sound harsh. And if you've ever experienced the traumas of rape, or if you've ever experienced the traumas of domestic violence, if you've ever experienced any of those things, I am a person who has had abortions in the past. And what's there is I also have had an ex that used to enjoy stalking me. And it was probably the most toxic relationship that I've ever been in my life. And I've been in relationships where I've been raped. I've been in relationships in which I've had a gun pulled on me because I was on Facebook too much. So I've experienced my shares of unhealthy relationships. I've kissed a couple of kings too, but I've also kissed a couple of frogs. And so I say that to say it is a woman's body. It is a woman's choice. And having these men, if men, I saw someone post, if it was really about the baby, then there would be mandatory maternity leave for everyone. There would be a more open policy around breastfeeding. There would be no health bills,
Postpartum support.
Postpartum support. Yeah, there would be so many other resources that would be spent to go towards making sure that the female and the baby are actually kept safe and sound, and here we go with Gregory. And which is one of the greatest things that I ever could do is, and let me say this too, as being someone who has experienced what I've experienced, giving birth and trusting that God has trusted me to give life is also a blessing. Mm-hmm. And if I ever had to do it again, I'd always choose life. And I believe that it's a woman's right. It's a woman's body, because no one has to carry that baby for 9 months, 10. Gregory, stop it. 10 months. And 5 months, 6 months, however long, and then be a parent. Gregory, stop it.
I'm still carrying mine, and he's too.
You see Gregory standing on top of my head.
See, you carry them forever. You carry them forever. And as I would say, as a naturalist, I'm a self-proclaimed naturalist. I really do go really hard into natural healing. I do not support womb trauma at all. And I don't even think I would ever advise anybody to get an abortion, but I do stand with Roe versus Wade because I know that it is not my choice. It is not anyone's choice, especially a man, to tell a woman what she can do with her body. It's not fair. It definitely shouldn't be up to the law at all. I think that it's just going to encourage women or force women to go into desperate measures to complete the same thing or to get the same result. And I think unless they were going to, like you said, implement, I don't know, orphanages, adoption reform or something, some type of solution, because you can't take away something and then just leave it. You know what I mean?
I don't believe that this group of white men care that much about us. Planned Parenthood was created.
It has to be like a capitalist reason, right?
Well, here it is. Planned Parenthood was created because they wanted to be able to use data and count how many of us people of color were actually given abortions. And they used the embryo to create a lot of like the embryos from the babies were used inside of medical research. So
And stem cells.
and the placenta. So that was part of Planned Parenthood. There was a huge lawsuit about that. Now, with everything that I think is going on, you know, I'm someone who's been advocating around there being an investigation into my 2 children being trafficked. And inside of this conversation, it's huge business. Human trafficking is the biggest business right there, right out now, other than, or maybe in comparison to the prison industrial system.
Right.
So between the two, we're about to have all of these kids coming into the world, and we're about to have experience all of these parents under strict scrutiny of going to prison or things like that. Because one of the people I was speaking with, we had a full conversation of what happens to those children when they tell these moms that are on drugs and stuff, if you don't want your kid, we won't judge you, just drop them off at the hospital. Like, what happens to them? Do they go into defects? Like, how do you just drop your child off and nothing happened? And
No
there's
birth certificate.
no birth certificate. No one knows any way to track this child. And if someone cared, then they wouldn't just be dropping them off on the step. So what happens to these babies? You know, so it's like
That
when we
we
start
should
discussing the Roe versus Wade overturned by these white men, you know, no different. Well, it is what it is. You just can't convince me that these old 70 and 80-year-old white men
just at home crying about abortion at night, losing sleep over it.
right.
I don't get it. So I definitely think,
Especially since half of them have are into the fetish communities. I've had to sign a non-disclosure agreement because they wanted me to come to meet them at one of them clubs. So these judges, these lawyers, these elected officials,
and not to mention that the defects and adoption, all of that it's so overcrowded. I have my own blood cousin was just forced to adopt a baby because she was the biological sister of the other baby. Like, she took in a foster child. She later decided that she wanted to adopt her. When she decided that she wanted to adopt her when she was 2 years old, they told her that the same mother who was a known drug user, who has 9 kids in the system, the same mother had another baby, and that she can't adopt the baby that she had unless she takes both of them.
Wow. Well, when Gregory was in foster care, they wouldn't release him to my mother. They wouldn't release him to my family. They tried to get the foster parents to adopt him within the first 30 days. And this is why I'm so patient with him. Like, we do therapy. They told me that Gregory is living out the trauma that he experienced in foster care. And he doesn't have any kind of ADHD or ADDs or anything. And the first year that he was in foster care, he was with a Caucasian family who's a former defects employee who did not put him into any kind of daycare. And one day my son told me, and he says it kind of sometimes, shut that N baby up. Shut that ninja baby up. And in saying that, what's there is, she told me out of her mouth the reason why she didn't adopt was because, hold on, Gregory, but the reason why she didn't adopt was because he was Black. And that was my saving grace, though. So I, count it all joy.
Thank God for that.
She adopted. They were trying to terminate my parental rights. So when it comes to situations like this, so anywho, thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for welcoming Nikkei. Nikkei, I'm so grateful. You have become so valuable in just this one show. Well, you're valuable anyways, but thank you, youdbomb.com. I appreciate you.
Thank you
and
for
y'all,
having me. I'm very excited, and I can't wait for the subjects that we're going to cover and for all the people that we're going to help and bring awareness to.
Gregory, keep saying hi, Nikkei. We got to come up with a new Unjust. So y'all, this has been Shantae and Nikkei, and there goes Gregory. And this is Unjust.
like this. I like this. Like this. I like this.